So then, we're going to look at Daniel chapter 4, and you could turn to that in the Bible if you would. So Daniel chapter 4 and verse 28. So you can get that in front of you. I think it'll also appear on the screen, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe it's there, maybe it's not. If it's not, it'd be great if you got it on your device in front of you. And I'm going to read that to you in a moment or two. Just give you time to find it. Daniel 4:28. And this is a story about King Nebuchadnezzar. And so he's a pretty famous king in the ancient world, King Nebuchadnezzar. So, Daniel 4:28. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, as the king was walking, so he's had a revelation, basically, is the background to this. And he's been warned essentially about pride. But the warning is not enough for him. And in that, just pausing for a moment, very much like us human beings, in that we can be warned all you like, but sometimes we just have to make our own mess and learn our own lessons. It's a shame, because if we could learn from other people's mistakes, life would be so much easier for us. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon that I have built?" Now, Babylon was one of the great cities of the ancient world. And Nebuchadnezzar is taking pride in what he has achieved. 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon that I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Now, I'm guessing that none of you, and I don't think I have ever said something so crass to myself, but just pause for a moment. Have you ever got a little bit too pleased with yourself? Have you ever imagined yourself to be somewhat superior to other people? I'm a little bit more holy. I'm a little bit more committed than other people. I'm one of the super Christians. I'm a bit better than other people at things. Have you ever looked at other people with contempt and thought, I'm one of the better ones? All right. Well, let's read on. Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar." Let me just pause for one moment. All right, we're going to carry on. From verse 31. Even as these words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You'll be driven away from people and will live like the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms of the earth and gives them to anyone he wishes." Immediately what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of a bird. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes towards heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honoured and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, 'What have you done?' At that time, my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble." Now, let's just pause for a moment or two. This is essentially a very simple story. And the simplicity of the story is this: a king gets too proud and he is brought down to earth. And God humbles him. But then he is restored. And so the simple message is, obviously, that pride goes before a fall. We're going to have some time discussing in small groups now before I then round up with some thoughts at the end. But could we have the spotlight questions, please, Theo? Can we move to the other presentation? And here are a couple of questions I'd like you to discuss in your groups. Where are you tempted to become proud? And what things could you do to stop pride in its tracks? Why don't you just discuss those in your groups for a moment or two, so that you can sort of see yourself in this story, or at least the temptation for yourself to be in this story. Are there things where you're tempted to be proud? I think every human being has them. And then we'll round up once you've read yourself into the story a little bit with some thoughts. Okay. Well, I hope you had some kind of fruitful discussion there. These are deep questions, right? So you could easily spend the whole of the rest of the evening on these. Where are you tempted to become proud? I am guessing the truth is generally they're things that we think we're gifted at, right? Where we think we've got some kind of something to offer. And that's a shame, really, because God gives us gifts and abilities so that we can serve others in the church and outside of the church, of course, so that we can be useful in the world, be fruitful and help other people. But the danger is that rather than using those things to help others, they kind of get turned in on themselves and they become more about us and other people recognizing our greatness. So here's King Nebuchadnezzar. He's a very, very powerful man. Perhaps we could have... This is actually a photo that was taken during his reign. And he's a very powerful man. He's got the whole world at his feet. He can do pretty much anything he wants to. And he has had some achievements. He's built this beautiful city. But instead of being able to offer those gifts to God, and instead of being able to use them to bless the people, actually in his heart, what he's really interested in is what it means for King Nebuchadnezzar. And God makes an object lesson of him. Next slide, please. His pride is blinding him, and pride has that tendency to blind us. And next slide is this very disturbing picture, painting by William Blake. I don't know if you've seen that, of Nebuchadnezzar reduced to little more than an animal because of his pride. Next slide, please. The danger is, of course, that this can be any one of us. God may not do such a dramatic thing to us in our lifetime, but pride has this tendency to get its grip on us. And so Charlie, kindly made this photo impression for me of what was possible to happen to me and could happen to each one of us. Pride distorts us and it makes us like an animal, really. All right, next slide, please. Some quotes from C.S. Lewis, who wrote, I think, very insightfully about this problem. Pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man. That is so insightful. It is the comparison that makes you proud, the pleasure of being above the rest. once the element of competition is gone, pride is gone. It's a very insightful point that actually it's the comparing ourselves to other people that is so much of the problem here. Next slide, please. A proud man, says C.S. Lewis, is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you're looking down, you cannot see something that's above you. Pride cuts us off from God. And one more slide, C.S. Lewis. Pride, he says, is spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense. All right, next slide, please. Just a word about humility. Humility, on the other hand, is the first step towards greatness. In admitting that we do not know everything, we open ourselves to learning. In admitting that we can fail, we open another pathway to success. In admitting that we're flawed, we open ourselves to accepting others. Next slide, please. Humility, then, I never get tired of this quote, I think it's so powerful, is not thinking less of yourself, but is thinking of yourself less. I think personally it's a lifetime's challenge to become a person of genuine humility. It's hard for us. By nature, we're quite turned in on ourselves. But to be able to offer what we can to God and to the world without becoming consumed by our own kind of need for attention and the approval of others, and somehow to feel we are superior to others, that is a lifetime's challenge. May God give you and me the strength by his Holy Spirit to bear this fruit of the Spirit, humility, and not be consumed by the cancer of pride.